Welcome to UO Today. I'm Barbara Altman, Director of the Oregon Humanities Center. Our guest today is Peter Hoffmeister, a writer, teacher, and avid rock climber. His book, The End of Boys, a memoir about his turbulent transition from youth to manhood, was published in 2011. Hoffmeister grew up with 5 siblings in Eugene. Homeschooled until age 14, he attended 4 high schools, was expelled from 3 of them, then graduated from South Eugene High in 1995. Hoffmeister received his degree in English at the U of O. He studied poetry and creative writing with Dorianne Laux and went on to earn an MA in language arts teaching at Pacific University. His fiction collection, Loss, won the 2006 Oregon Literary Arts Fellowship. He has written features for Climbing and Rock and Ice magazines. His fiction and poetry have appeared in the Rogue Voice and in Blaze Vox. Hoffmeister teaches language arts and outdoor pursuits at South Eugene High School. He gave a reading from The End of Boys at the U of O on November 9th, 2011. Peter, welcome to UO Today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's so fun for us to feature a local author. We had your colleague and fellow writer Miriam Gershaw on the show a couple of years ago, and we'll get back to what she has to say about your book. But to begin with, I was hoping that you might read us the opening because it's the strongest entry into it that I can think of. Would you mind reading us that?
Yeah, no problem.
Great, thanks.
This is from the chapter The Cat. I sneak the shotgun. Load the 3 yellow cartridges printed with Remington 20 gauge. Snap the action shut. Aim at items in my room, the lamp, my baseball card collection, a picture of my parents. Finger the trigger. I am alone, 14. I ease the stock down from my shoulder and turn the gun back toward myself. Stare down the barrel. Tap my index finger against the hollow, producing a sucking sound. I put my mouth over the barrel, taste the metal, feel the air inside, the barrel's breath on my tongue. I relax my lips and close my eyes. I can smell the invisible beginnings of rust. The voice is not there, but the hum. It slides pitches higher, a rush of warm air, the electric collision of a storm front. I nod my head, taking the loaded gun with me, up and down. I put my hands around the single barrel, closing my fingers, studying the steel in my mouth against my teeth, lips sliding on gun oil. Sitting on the edge of the bed, 8 years old, in the middle of the night, awake, watching the wall a machine, ball bearings clink, slide through chutes, drop, the language of working metal. Rhythm in front of me, in front of my open eyes, a wall alive. I have a fantasy that a big dog attacks me, a Rottweiler. Its neck muscles are rolled telephone cables under the loose sweatshirt of its skin. Maybe I'll go to art school and become a painter like my mother. I open my eyes, ease the gun out. The sight catches on my 2 front teeth and clicks. The hum exhales. I can feel the release of nervous animal sweat, the drip underneath my arms. My father's coming home from work from the hospital. He'll check my math and science work. I unload the gun and sneak it back down. My mother is feeding applesauce to my baby brother, Ellis, in the kitchen. She doesn't see me. Before I shelve the gun in the basement, I hold it one more time. Loaded shotgun and no mirrors. It doesn't matter that I am a 14-year-old homeschooled boy and 5 feet 2 inches tall, that I've never kissed a girl. It doesn't matter that I obey the voice.
That's a pretty strong pull into the rest of the narrative. That's a very powerful portrayal of an adolescent wrestling with a lot of stuff. What's that kid doing with a loaded shotgun in his bedroom?
That's a good question. Actually, I haven't been asked that question before, strangely enough. I think, I'm trying to deal with my reality. I think every adolescent has some kind of struggle, some kind of identity crisis. Something they struggle with. Maybe it's violence, maybe it's imagery, maybe it's addiction, maybe it's, gender. It could be anything. And for me, I was trying to realize my place in the world and understand who I was going to be. And I had a kind of fascination with guns and the ability either to hurt somebody or hurt myself.
There are a number of moments in the book, and it's actually kind of a repeated motif, where the protagonist, thinks about killing somebody, comes close to killing somebody, in the end doesn't kill that person. How did you work that out in your head when you were 14 and 16 and 17 and 18? Do you think it's just luck that you didn't end up pulling the trigger on those people?
I don't know. My brother Cooper is always saying that we had huge guardian angels. I don't know. I feel grace. I'm grateful that I didn't end up killing somebody. I know that in certain situations I rationalized it and it seemed like a reasonable thing to do. I can't imagine rationalizing that now, but at that age, at that kind of place of desperation, it seemed reasonable to kill myself or kill somebody else. And it's strange to think that that was a reasonable decision at that time in my head.
It's quite miraculous for the reader to see you come through the end of that really troubled period, because there's lots of moments in the book when it could have gone the other way and you yourself could have been killed. Do you also feel that you were touched with grace for coming through all this? Sane, healthy, on your feet?
Yeah, I think so. One of my friends just gave me Michael Gilmore's Shot in the Heart. I don't know if you've read that memoir, but it's a beautiful memoir. Won the National Book Critics Circle Award and LA Times Award. Beautiful book, but his brothers didn't make it through. You know, his older brother, Gary Gilmore, was executed after murdering 2 men in Utah, and his other brother died of stab wounds, they think, from an ice pick, but they're not sure. And it was that kind of thing where, you know, I think if Coop and I were less fortunate, we might have either been killed or killed somebody, but by grace, we keep on, you know, so I'm really thankful for my life right now.
Can you talk a little bit about Cooper? You say in a number of places that he's the other protagonist of the book, and he certainly figures large. He's half shown in the photograph on the cover, and he's really one of your big connections to the world throughout. Yeah. Where is he now?
He's in Utah. He's been a professional snowboarder for the last 12 years, and he's just retiring this year. He's working in the industry doing filming. He's married. He has a little boy. He's going back to school, at least part-time, if not full-time this year. He's doing really well. He struggled, and, you know, he's had his times being in trouble too. It's funny because when people criticize the book, one of the things they say is that Cooper can't be a real character. But one of his friends wrote me a letter recently and said, you know, if they don't believe Cooper's a real character, you should have him just do a backflip off a building or something. He's wild and crazy and fun and loyal and scary and, you know, one of my favorite people.
It might be on your blog. I read a lovely passage about you watching him read to his son without his shirt on, covered with tattoos and scars and muscle. Yeah. It sounds like he's a pretty compelling personality.
He really is. People have been drawn to Cooper since he was born. He's one of those kids, you know, that would have messed up hair and mismatching clothes, and every girl would love him. And he was great. He was a great little kid.
I wanted to go back to the passage you read just a little bit. There's hints in there of the possibility of real mental illness. Mm-hmm. There's feeling like the house and the walls are full of machinery, that they are machinery. There's the compulsion with the gun. There's hearing the voice. Mm-hmm. How does that play out throughout the book, and how true is that to your actual experience?
Yeah, I've had a fair amount of counseling, although I don't know much about mental illness other than what I've learned in psychology classes. I know that I have obsessive compulsive disorder to some degree, but I found ways to control it. I think what I've heard is that I had some sort of psychotic break. You know, I don't have a long-standing chemical imbalance, but I basically just broke down from the pressure and the bad choices and the bad circumstances and couldn't deal with the world anymore in any kind of sane, normal way. So I was fortunate that way, not to have some kind of imbalance that I had to deal with the rest of my life, and fortunate that I don't have to deal with that today. But it was a scary place to be for kind of a long period of time as a teenager.
One of the things that's so surprising and compelling about this book is here we are in the small city of Eugene. You identify places, locations, all kinds of people, and you are startlingly forthcoming about your family, your parents, your siblings, other than Cooper and Cooper himself. It seems to me like a big, bold thing to do, to publish a memoir like this while you're still living and working here. Was that a hard decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think writing memoir is a wicked art. It's really difficult. I wanted to write these stories because I felt like these stories were important to me and maybe hopefully to other people, but I wasn't ready when I first tried, and then later I was writing a novel, and it was a really bad novel, and it was semi-autobiographical, and the writing was awful. And my writing partner, Jose Chavez, said, you've got to write your story. You have a really good story. And I started talking to my wife, Jenny, about it, and she said she'd support me. So I started to write it, and it wasn't written well at first, but I realized right away I was either going to have to novelize the whole thing or be as honest as I could possibly be. And there are ways that I was, definitely making mistakes as I went along. I tried to fact check as much as I could, but it's a difficult thing to try to write honestly about your life, and because your life isn't yours alone, and it's tied together with all the people's lives around you, and when you know a lot of people in this town, it's difficult.
And there's a lot of stuff going on in that book that is dysfunctional, that is illegal, that is questionable in so many ways. It's pretty revealing.
Yeah, I did have to change the location of one scene that happened in Eugene, and a parent of a person went on Amazon and made sure to point out that I was a liar because I'd changed the location of that scene, but lawyers asked me to do that, so I had to do that.
So how much wear and tear has it been to deal with the reaction? You mentioned before we started taping that you'd actually had some hate mail.
Yeah, I mean, some people are really not happy with the book. Some people don't see the value of the story, and I mean, if you just look on Amazon, some of the one-star reviews say things like the end of integrity and things like that. But I feel like, it's not the most important thing to be loved by other people if it's got to be all other people. I think it was C.S. Lewis said, 50% of the people you meet don't like you, so you shouldn't try so hard. I think that's pretty good advice.
And it does sound as though you've had a lot of pretty steadfast support, not only from your wife, Jenny, but also from your siblings, right? Even Cooper, but also your sisters?
Yeah, my older sister, Hillary, has been really supportive, and Coop's obviously been supportive. My best friend from childhood, my best friend now. People have written me very kind emails and letters and called me, and it's starting to spread with this giveaway we did in the fall. It's starting to spread nationally, and so I'm getting notes about people in different institutions all over the country, who are moved by the story, and I think that's where I feel like it was important to tell the truth.
Can you tell me about the giveaway? I don't know about that.
Oh, yeah. Ben Leroy, who runs Tyrus Books, he started Bleak House Books, and then he started Tyrus, and he sold Tyrus, and now he's the publisher. He had this idea for Amazon giveaways. If you set the book at $0, then anyone can download it for free. So in 9 days, we gave away 31,000 copies of the book all over the country, and some people from other countries. And it was just one of those things where we thought, well, what's more important, spreading the story or making money on every copy? And I'd rather spread the story. And, maybe it'll sell copies, maybe it won't sell copies. And that doesn't really matter. It's more, are we writing as art? Are we writing for an audience? Or are we writing to get rich? And if I want to write literary memoir, then I'm pretty much believing that I'm never going to be rich anyway. So
31,000 copies in 9 days.
Yeah.
There's a lovely line that you quote somewhere. You recount that you said to your wife, "We're never going to have any money if I want to be a writer," and she said, "Nah, I don't like money anyway."
Yeah, she's great.
That's pretty remarkable support. Yeah. I wanted to go back to what I mentioned at the beginning. Another local and very fine writer, Miriam Gershow, is quoted on the back of your book with one of the blurbs, and she says, "This book will punch you in the face in the best possible way."
Yeah, Miriam's great.
It's a great line, and it's also really it points at the fact that it's kind of a story of redemption. This kid emerges from those troubled years. Did you write it with the intent of showing his emergence from that turbulence?
Yeah, I was hoping to. The first draft was 521 pages of terrible, but yeah, it wasn't good. But then I thought, what's important here? And I really focused on 3 years as I revised the book over and over. It was the 13th draft that sold. And I was hoping that it would show some redemption because I went on to get married, have children, coach youth soccer, teach, kind of have a more balanced life, obviously, than I did as a teenager. But some people don't see that still. Some people still feel the book is really negative, and, some people focus on the fact that we would drink mouthwash and talk about really violent things, and we did. But I don't think that's the point by the end, and I'm hoping that readers see that there's some kind of resolution.
By the end of the narrative, this kid has made his peace with his father, with his mother. He's settled, he's going to school, at least off and on. And there's a kind of a maturity of perspective at the end, which I'm assuming is behind your title, The End of Boys. Yeah. Is that a reference to the end of his boyhood and his transition into manhood?
Yeah, I feel like there is an ending for every boy or girl, and we have to transition if we're going to develop as humans. And I wanted this book to be about the ending of that and hopefully point to this resolution. Some of it, not explicitly said, but that you'd understand that there was this transition there. Yeah.
It's really beautiful to see the change in the boy's relationship with his father. At first he's scared of, impressed by, very much loving of his father, but also totally intimidated and frightened. And then by the end, his father has lost some of that power, and they're on much more equal footing.
Yeah.
I understand that you are in good relationships with your family now. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, yeah, my father and I just went to a reading the other day, and together, and we go out to coffee, or we'll drink beer and watch baseball or something. He's great. I think that was one of the things, is I was writing about the worst time in my life, and it was also the worst time in my father's life. And so, yeah, I had 3 horrible years, and my father had 3 horrible years at the same time. And that was maybe the most difficult decision, to publish the book, knowing that my dad would look really bad in some scenes, and my dad isn't like that at all anymore. I mean, yes, he broke my nose, and he used to tell that as a funny story, but that was really how our family was back then, and it's nothing like that now. And, he's an incredible grandfather, and my daughters love him. And, he's the kind of guy who'll just take them to a swimming pool and hang out with them for 4 hours. So I think we're on really good terms, and I was hoping that readers would understand that there was that resolution. That was one of my goals.
It sure comes across in those last couple of chapters. Yeah.
Good.
You're now working in this really wonderful program at South Eugene High, the Integrated Outdoor Program. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, we just did our desert trip the last 3 days. Got back last night. The outdoor program is something I started with my friend Jeff Hess, who teaches in the PE department. I teach in the English department, but he had a lot of experience teaching English, AP, Lit, and I taught English, but I taught 1 year of PE before I finished my master's degree. So we traded one section of PE and English and started this program. So it's both outdoor pursuits that gives the kids PE credit, and then English, where we focus on environmental and adventure literature and all different forms of essay writing and poetry. And so the unit we just did, we were reading Desert Solitaire by Edward Abbey, and then focusing on Leaves of Grass with Walt Whitman. And those two things, are really nice in juxtaposition. And then the students are writing problem solution essays like Abby and poetry like Whitman, and we're reading these things aloud to each other. And then we went into the desert at the end of that reading and writing unit, and we did map and compass survival work. We did caving, climbing, building survival shelters, finding water, all that kind of stuff.
What do the kids take away from this program where they have really significant challenges outdoors? You've done ice camping, you've done rock climbing, you've done all kinds of really seriously challenging physical pursuits with them.
There are multiple goals there for us. One, we want them to have really good interpersonal relationships. I felt like in my teenage years, such stunted relationships. And in the outdoor program, they get so close. Those kids are incredible. And, the groups that I have in that class, because they choose to be in the program, in fact, there's a waiting list every year, we just get incredible kids. And then with our best students, they're allowed to apply for a second year as student leaders their senior year. And so 6 come back and help. And I'm hoping for those kids, the development that they get will affect their lives long term. We prepare them to be outward bound leaders or Knowles leaders or work in the Woofer program or with U of O outdoor program, anything like that. And that's kind of our goal with those 6 student leaders. But with the rest, there's getting back in contact with nature and kind of going away from the technological world that we're obsessed with right now and getting out from underneath the fluorescent lights and being out in all weather. And Eugene's weather is so mild that we're able to do things year-round here and bike and climb trees and read in parks and write poetry outside and journal outside. We really just want them to kind of have that long-standing outdoor experience, but also be able to talk to people and do these activities with people long-term.
So those seniors who come back get a major dose of leadership training, right?
Yes.
Don't they plan their own excursions? They have to submit to you a plan for an excursion?
Yeah, I work with them one-on-one, and we go through rough drafts of their plan, and they have to figure out a plan. For example, one of them right now is working on a trip to Smith Rock State Park. So she has to find an experienced adult volunteer to go with her. She has to write an itinerary, copy maps, figure out all the money, figure out all the food, and then she has to execute the trip in accordance with the school district's rules and our program's rules. And she really, each student leader is going to learn a lot about leadership, definitely.
It's a lot of responsibility, but it looks as though they really rise to the occasion.
They do. Our student leaders are incredible, and the 6 we have this year are just really good people.
Well, as I mentioned to you, I was checking out your ratings on ratemyteacher.com. And clearly this works really well. Your students could not be more thrilled with the experience, so wish they could all do that.
Oh, thank you.
Peter, before we close, I wanted to talk about your other writing just a little bit. What was the collection loss about the one for which you won the award?
Well, I was working with the memoir. Like I said, I had that really bad first draft, and my writing abilities just weren't what I wanted them to be. I studied with a lot of poets. I studied with Michael and Matthew Dickman and Mike McGriff and Dorian Laux and Jose Chavez, and I realized that my prose wasn't where it needed to be. It wasn't poetic enough, and I didn't understand imagery the way I really needed to understand imagery, and I didn't understand structure and what it took to really put something together. So I chose to spend a year just writing South American cuentos brevísimos like Augusto Monterroso and Alejandro Pizarnik and Jorge Luis Borges. So I read and reread all these famous Central American and South American writers and just kind of kept their writing in the forefront of my brain. And I wrote every single morning, just wrote short after short. I started putting these together into a collection. And I learned about literary arts in Portland, and someone said, said, "You got to apply for this fellowship. I think these could win." And so I sent a chunk of my collection to them and ended up being chosen.
You still writing shorts?
I have so many things I'm working on right now. I'm trying to finish my novel and get it back to my agent this week, actually. And then I've got a nonfiction book proposal about taking young people outdoors. And then I have that collection that I keep going back to, and eventually I'm hoping to publish that maybe with Tyrus, with Ben Leroy, or maybe with some other contact. It's difficult to publish short story collection. They don't sell.
Are you able to say anything about the novel right now?
Yeah, I was reading the story of Samson. I don't know if you know that story.
Yes, in the biblical Samson?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's an old Jewish story, and it has this incredible 3-part structure. And it's the story that I felt like I understood because it was love and love lost and violence and isolation. And I've been kind of going through that story in my head. I get really obsessed with stories. And I was going through that in my head because someone said, this is a really good story. And so I was reading it. I read it maybe 10 or 15 times. And I started thinking about what that would be like, as a backdrop. And then I was in Yosemite, and I found out about the Miwok Paiute trade with the National Park Service, and how the Park Service is trying to get people to believe that the Miwoks were in Yosemite Valley first. They actually have it on their signs. And I knew some of the real story behind that, and so I started to put these things together, and then I started to think about what people group in the valley is marginalized in the homeless climber population called the dirtbags. Are this fringe group that lives in caves, and I was like, Samson lived in caves, and so I started putting together this whole structure, and then I completely failed writing the first draft. It was a mess, and Miriam is actually someone I sent the first chunk to, and she said, oh, it's got all these compelling themes, and it doesn't work at all. And which is kind of the story of my writing life, so I'm working on that novel right now, but it's more revised now.
Are you willing to reveal a title, and we'll end there?
Yeah,
Or
it's called Graphic the Valley.
Okay, Graphic the Valley.
Graphic
All right.
the Valley.
Well, best wishes as you bring that one home.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to it already.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking a half hour to talk to me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We've been talking with Peter Hoffmeister, author of The End of Boys, a memoir about his turbulent transition from youth to manhood. He gave a reading at the U of O on November 9th, 2011. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.